All right. Okay, so we will get started. I wanted to share with you guys multiple offers and a great template that I used to kind of run through this with clients. I found that putting it in a template form like this, and I am big on my Google Sheets, served many purposes and was very helpful for a number of reasons. Part of that is when trying to deliver those, especially when you have a market in which when you list a property, and you may very well receive anywhere from 4 to 14 offers, it can be very overwhelming once you list something to keep track of what offers you've already come in and reviewed and what other offers are still coming in, and then communicating to the different agents what the status of their offer is, as well as if you have gathered all of them. Mind you, when you're submitting your offer as a buyer's agent, we're always clicking the attach. If you're submitting it via .loop, attach as a PDF, that's extremely helpful. But I found this was a really good communication tool and a way to gather all of the offers as we were evaluating them with my sellers. The other nice piece of this, guys, is when it came time for the appraisal and for me to prepare my appraisal packet, then I also was able to go back to this spreadsheet and use it for data to provide to the appraiser as to why we went so far above asking price. You know, we had 8 offers that came in, 7 of them were above asking, X number of them didn't have any closing cost involved, and it was a really good tool for that appraisal process. Also, it was a really good tool if anything were to have happened during inspections and the buyer cancel. I had a sheet that I could go back to and call all of those agents again and say, hey, are your buyers still looking? Would you be interested? Looks like we're going to fall out of contract. Are you interested? Kind of a piece. So it was a really great way to have all of it already gathered for me that I could reference back if needed between, you know, when we go under contract and when we close, because we all know that there's a lot of steps that still happen after that initial reviewing offers date. So this is kind of the simple template. It was a template that I would then just open up and come up here to the file and say, make a copy. And I would just make a copy and I would name it whatever the name of my client was, so that it was labeled for each individual copy. And then that template always remained the same and I could just go use it over and over again and make a new copy for each client. Okay, so the different fields, and I'm going to go through and share with you. So this is just the blank one, which I can share with everybody. I did go ahead and pull up one that was from a previous transaction so that we could look at some stuff that had actual data in it, because hopefully that would help it make a little more sense. So I'm going to just use this first column as an example, but basically I like to track the agent's name, their phone number, and their email address. Again, this made that at the end of the day, if we are collecting all offers through 5 o'clock on Saturday, when I had to go and I had a conversation with my sellers and then I needed to go communicate that to each of the different agents, it made it really, really simple for me to be able to say, oh, here's Jody's number. Let me give her a call and let her know that we did not select their offer and here's feedback on the other offers. It also, just having it at my fingertips to make sure who was who and which offer was which was really convenient. Often when I would deliver this to my clients, I would end up hiding email and phone number address. So I would just hide this when I was speaking about it to my clients so that they're not, feeling like they have the, and none of them did, but so that they're not calling the agents. But I would, just for simplicity, when I was presenting to them, hide those fields. And guys, if you've got any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to speak up and ask. The next field that I would capture, and in this section here, I would always kind of capture the financials, starting with purchase price. So the offer of what the purchase price was in the offer. So $200,000, seller paid closing cost of $4,000, and then a home warranty of $495. The reason I'm including the home warranty is because that does come out of the net. If they were asking the seller to pay for that home warranty, it would come out of the net. And so it automatically was calculating in my template to take out, so take the purchase price minus the seller paid closing cost if they were applicable, the home warranty, and it gave the net. The reason this was important, as you can see across the board, some of these, it would get really confusing because somebody might be offering more, but they're asking for closing cost. And so it made it easy to kind of, for your sellers to understand too, okay, I know this one is higher. So this 217 is higher, but they're asking for 5,000 in closing costs. So it's really a 211 offer. The other thing that many people ask about and what we see a lot of these days is escalatory clauses. And so there would be, I made a column or a row underneath that where I would list if there was an escalatory clause. And I would calculate that manually, what that would look like. So there wasn't any automatic calculation there, but I would calculate it manually. I'm going to skip down here to the bottom where I would include the details of that escalatory clause. So I have an additional notes row in which I would put the additional information. So and on this 5th offer, they've got an escalatory, I'm sorry, offer number 6. They've got an escalatory where they're willing to go 1,000 above, up to 221. So I had those notes there so I could reference the details of that escalatory, but I would just calculate out what does that actually look like up here in row 11. And I apologize, I've got 2 additional terms is where I would capture that information. All right. Next, I like to include closing date and possession date. And we've talked about this before. I would highly encourage that this is a conversation you're having with your sellers prior to you even taking the listing live in the MLS. The reason I would encourage you to have a conversation of what their ideal closing and possession date is the easier we can simplify this and get it to what I apologize, let me back up. So why it's important to have that conversation, and often it looked like this to the sellers. Sellers, let's look at the calendar. Ideally, if you could pick out what date you closed, what day on the calendar would that be? Many a times, sellers would often say, oh, I don't know. Or there might be times where we already have a new house for them, so they really kind of know what their calendar looks like and what the ideal date would be. But we would start with that starting point. So like ideally, we would like to close on the 19th. And we would like to, and then it would allow me to say, okay, great. It's best, let's do a Thursday. So if the 19th was a Friday, I would give me the ability to have the conversation of like, let's move it to a Thursday so we have extra time in case funding doesn't happen day of. And it would give me the ability to have all of that conversation before we go on the market, so that we're not having that conversation when we're talking about all these other terms when we're talking about the multiple offers. So I would be able to walk through, okay, ideal closing date. And then we could also talk about possession. And as a seller, you're in the driver's seat. And so if we could talk then about ideally, if you had best case scenario, you closed on the 19th or on the 18th, that Thursday, the 18th, and then ideally you held possession until, what do you feel, like Saturday at 11 a.m. And we could kind of get those conversations and their ideals out of the way up front, because that's already kind of a little bit of a confusing conversation and a lot of things for sellers to think through. So doing that before you actually take it live and start collecting any offers is helpful. The other reason that it is incredibly helpful, if it is a time sensitive, where those dates are important to your sellers, is you're able to communicate that out to the buyer's agents that are showing the property, that my sellers ideally would like to close on the 18th and hold possession through 11 a.m. on the 20th. And it gives them a good idea of what to make that term. And when you fill out this spreadsheet, then it's very clear across the board how many of those people can meet that checkpoint, and that's not a term that you have to counter with. Does that make sense? So I'd highly encourage having that conversation up front. But yes, so closing and possession. And again, I had those 2 different dates because, oftentimes sellers would ask for additional closing time and then, or additional possession time after closing. The next section, and I guess too, if you had any details around that possession, if they were going to charge a rent back amount for holding possession after closing, you could make notes here under this section. Sometimes some buyers, to be really competitive, may say you can hold possession for, I've seen it before, guys, where buyers are allowing sellers to hold possession for 2 weeks after closing, just because they want to make their offer look the most ideal to a seller without any rent back payment. But that would be, I would include that here in this line 15. Then inspection period. So the next section was inspection period and earnest deposit. So sometimes I would also include the resolution period. So if you wanted to come in and include underneath inspection period, the renegotiation period, you could, and the reason being that if someone had wrote an inspection period of 10 days, renegotiation period of 5 days, another offer may very well have put inspection period of 12 days, renegotiation period of 5 days. You're leaving that window open for a buyer for a total of 17 days. So kind of capturing what that is, I think is important for a seller to understand. And noting that like with agents trying to be really competitive with their offers, the agent that's willing to do a 5-day inspection period and a 3-day renegotiation period would be a benefit to someone that's other terms are very, very similar. And so having a place that you can talk through that with a client would be helpful. So again, inspection period, and you can see here across these offers, someone had a 12-day inspection period and everybody else is pretty standard at 10 days. And then earnest deposit. So I would just put in the earnest deposit amount because that is an important factor. And it was a good reminder to myself to make sure that when I went back and countered, that I countered on the earnest amount if it wasn't enough. So this house, it was right around a $200,000 property. So $1,000 earnest wasn't something that I'd be comfortable with. Typically, we're looking at least 1%. But it was often a reminder to myself of, don't forget to counter on this if it's not enough. It's also, again, if somebody was going to come in and put down, $10,000 earnest to show really good faith, I wanted to make sure that we were highlighting that in their offer. I'm not saying that anyone should be doing that on a $200,000 house, but again, more than anything, that one was one to remind myself if I needed to counter them on that. Okay, next section was really more on the lender part. So I would include who the lender is for the offer. And the reason that this is important is because as agents, we all know that working with a local lender is very different than working with a Bank of America or Quicken Loans sometimes, and can make a really big difference to the client. So I often would include the lender. If it was a loan officer that I was familiar with, I would include that as well and say, hey, I've worked with Phil Scaglia before. I've worked with this lender before and I know that they, write good pre-approval letters. They're solid lender. They're going to get stuff closed on time. They're on top of their stuff. So a lot of that was would be where I would include that. If it was cash, as you can see here in like column G, I would write cash so that it was very clear that this offer was a cash offer. The next thing that I would include was loan type. So I included the loan type as either conventional, FHA, VA, or again, cash. And the reason being is that with a VA or an FHA loan, there are sometimes requirements with those appraisals, and just to differentiate what those products look like. And unfortunately, a VA loan can sometimes take a little bit longer, but making sure a client is clear that with this FHA loan, how we talked about when we walked through your home, that there was not a railing going to the basement and that we were a little concerned about the height of the deck not having a railing around it. If we accepted this FHA loan, an appraiser could come in and require that we put up that railing. Again, if it's a strong enough, FHA loan, it's possible my clients would want to go with it, but we would maybe want to include some terms to make sure that they were aware of what they were signing up for. Next, I had the amount down. And this I just often put as a percentage. So the percentage down that the client was putting, and that was also so where we could differentiate. Again, when you're looking at anywhere from 7 offers to 14 offers, you've got to have some stuff that helps you be able to differentiate which one's stronger and what are we using to eliminate offers. Next, appraisal requirements. This was a line in which I just used if there was a loan that might possibly have appraisal requirements. I was going to make note of that here, that this one may possibly, and again, that's a communication tool to your sellers to let them know that with this this specific loan, there may be some appraisal requirements.
Elizabeth, can you expand on that? What you mean by an appraisal requirement? That's not necessarily an appraisal waiver or whatnot. That's something different.
Yes, I would say possibly being an appraisal requirement. So whether it be, we've got a property where we've got some maybe questionable a foundation that someone may come in and think is questionable, that a appraiser for an FHA home may come in and require that a structural engineer come in and bless it, even if the buyers are okay with it.
Okay, thank you.
your FHA loans, you might have peeling paint, you might have
Right.
electrical stuff. So that's what I mean there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would say that if there were, I included before when they weren't doing an appraisal in the additional terms, but with how much appraisal waivers are going on nowadays, guys, I think it would be beneficial to add another line in which says appraisal waiver terms, in which you could write in that buyer is willing to make up $5,000 of the difference of the appraisal. Buyer is waiving the appraisal, that kind of a thing there, because we are seeing so much of that these days. Next section, additional terms. So this is where I would include anything when it came to the escalatory addendum, any additional terms if they were asking for the sellers to do anything to the property. I also have in here where I'm including that the buyer was buying it as is with and not asking for any repairs. And I just had that kind of as a general, like, let's talk about how this one is different than other offers. And then on this cash offer, I had clarified with them that they were not doing an appraisal, because with cash, even though they aren't required to do an appraisal, they still have the option to do an appraisal and have that as an out. I also would include the additional or the expiration of the offer, just so I knew that if I had a really hot offer and I needed to reply to it within a certain window, it was just a way for me to gather and keep track of when offers were expiring if they had expirations on them. Finally, this last section or this last line, additional notes. This is where I had gone in and kind of put in notes that I either verbally got from the listing or from the buyer's agent and or my own, through conversations, what I was able to include. Like this first offer, the agent shared they couldn't go above 200,000. That's how much they were approved for. So I just made notes of those kinds of things. And if there was flexibility around the closing date, that kind of a thing. So this is a template that you can start with. By all means, depending on the listing and what was going on with the listing, I would make adjustments to this template. One example I will share, I've had before where going into it, especially in a hot market where the seller was in more control, I knew that we had a really old roof. Our roof may very well need, to be replaced in the next 3 to 5 years because we had already had a roofer come out, or there was times before where I knew that we had a roof that had composite over wood shake shingles. So the sellers and I had a conversation. Do you want to address this and replace the roof before going on the market? Or do you want to know that it might be something that we're dealing with when it comes to negotiating offers and inspections? Those particular clients said, Elizabeth, we understand what the cost is. We have a plan in place for if we do have to replace the roof, either with an offer or through inspections, let's go on without replacing the roof. And so in that circumstance, I ended up adding another column above the line here to say, are they asking for the roof to be replaced? Because I already knew how much it was to replace it. And that did drastically change the net across the board. Again, I got in writing from the buyers that they were not going to have, they were accepting the roof in its current state, kind of a thing. But if you've got big items like that, or if you know that the sellers were doing an allowance for carpet, would be another example. That would be where you would come up here and maybe insert another line to say, these people are taking us up on the allowance for carpet, or these of $2,000, or these people are taking us up on the allowance for the granite. You guys have heard about how I would get samples and put them on the counter and say, hey, we'll replace these countertops with granite. Here's the bid, here are the choices that you've got. Well, some clients would say, nope, we'll give you this price and you don't have to even mess with the counters. We'll take care of it after closing. So that was something that I wanted to make sure I differentiated in the template so that when I was going through with clients, we knew exactly what the terms of the offer were between the different ones that we were comparing. Any other questions? A lot of that was just inserting another line. So right clicking and inserting one above and then putting on here roof. And maybe that roof was an $8,000 roof because I already knew that it was an $8,000 roof. And so then the only other thing would be coming in and adjusting the calculation. So if you click on this cell that I'd already had pre-calculating for us, you can come up here to the bar at the top and it'll show you what it is that it's taking out. So it's saying a sum of B6 minus B7 minus B8. And then I can just click and type click in that bar and type B9. And now it's going to know that it needs to take that roof value out as well. And then you can just go and copy that across all of the cells to adjust it. Make sense?
Elizabeth, I really like how this is editable. I was using, I think, the Keller Williams spreadsheet that I think maybe Randy passed out a while ago, and I can't figure out a way to make edits to it. It's just kind of, it is what it is. And so this is nice that you can actually edit it and add your own pieces to it.
And there are every time there, and there's different terms for, you know, different properties where different things that are important to clients. But especially when you've got those circumstances where you're offering an allowance, or there's a roof, or there's a major ticket item involved, to really kind of compare apples to apples. This was really helpful. Any other questions about the template? And then I will walk through kind of what that presentation looked like with clients.
I actually had a quick question, and obviously there's expiration, you know, times at the end of each contract, but with a lot of like multiple offers, how long should you really wait until like grouping them together and then giving them over like to your buyers? Because I had a situation back when I was in Georgia, and we hadn't even been on market like more than 20, not even 24 hours. And we had like 8 offers, but like, do you cut it then and say, okay, well, hopefully the best is there, you know, because you obviously want to get the best for your client. So is there any kind of...
Yeah, Olivia, I think that's a great question. Oftentimes I found that, and this is again, the consultant me coming out, it depends on the situation of the sellers. If it's a vacant house and they're not being inconvenienced by the showings, then oftentimes it would be, we had a conversation just like we did about closing a possession. We would have a conversation ahead of time of, guys, if we get in this situation, which I think we will likely be in, or in case, because you don't want to ever say, we're going to have multiple offers and it's going to be crazy, and then it's crickets. But
Right.
Often it would be, in case we get in a situation where it looks like we're going to have multiple offers, here are your options on how we can handle that.
Okay.
If you like, we can let everybody know, since it's vacant, that we're going to collect all offers through Saturday at 1 o'clock.
Right, because I was gonna say it was really popular, like back home where I was, for like highest and best, but I didn't know if you wanted to like overuse that, especially since there's so many opportunities for, you know, multiple offers.
No, I think that, so a couple things there. So A, have that conversation ahead of time so that you kind of knew what the plan was. I
Right,
sometimes was really strategic about it, depending on who the situation. Why is it important to have that ahead of time? If it was a vacant house and my seller said, hey, I want to make sure that we get through that open house on Sunday because I want the full
Right.
amount of exposure, then we would maybe have a conversation where it was, okay, all offers are due in at 4 o'clock. They will be presented to the sellers at 5 o'clock and in such, right? Why that is important to know up ahead, if you for sure are going to have a deadline in which you are going to ask for highest and best buy, is that you also can communicate that out to.
preface it with the agents, yeah, because you don't want to upset anybody.
Well,
Feel
but
like-
also so here, Olivia, a lot of times too with multiple offers, as a listing agent, you're getting, your phone is blowing up and people
Yeah.
are saying,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
important to your sellers? When are you collecting offers through? So often I would put it in the agent remarks section to where only the agents could see if it was that case, where it was a vacant property and I knew for sure we were going to collect offers through, no matter what, through 5 o'clock on Sunday. I would put in there, sellers sellers are flexible, but would prefer closing date of this and possession date of this. And we will be collecting all offers and reviewing that, all offers due by 4 o'clock on Sunday, and will be reviewed with sellers at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That way it reduced the number of phone calls I got, because if an agent was just calling to ask me what the ideal closing and possession date was, and if they were just calling to ask me when offers were due before they went out, that phone call didn't come into me. And so it really greatly reduced the number of phone calls I was getting to only be giving the same information, out.
Okay.
So that's if it's a vacant property. Again, this is always your seller's choice, right? Like you present the options to your seller and then your seller gets to decide. And yet the times that there would be a property that was not vacant, sometimes my clients would say, well, like, what do you think we should do? And I would go through the options and say, we can play it by ear. It is helpful to give people a guide point to go towards.
Mhm.
Sometimes they would say, well, I mean, Elizabeth, if a really, really good offer came in, like we'd be willing to accept it and not do showings. I'd often list it on Thursday at
Mhm.
like 4 o'clock and then start showings early on Friday. And there's creative ways to get around how to do that. And yet, then they would say, well, if we didn't have to show it all day Saturday and we could just be home because we've got the 3 dogs and the 2 kids, like if we got a good, like I'm all game for just being
Yeah.
done. This is stressful because their phone will be blowing up with text messages and notifications of showings, and like they've got high anxiety. So they would sometimes say that to me. So often I would say, it changed my language. In that case, I would not put in the MLS that we're going to be collecting offers through 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Mhm.
That would be a time in which my verbiage to the buyer's agents calling me would be, well, the plan is if we end up with having multiple offers, we will likely review them. And it's again, very carefully choosing your words. We will likely review them at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Mhm.
And yet my sellers, you know, if they saw something that was really motivating, I think would move faster.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I had that happen before, and it was like an older couple and they weren't super tech savvy. So just getting all the paperwork and everything done, I wanted to make it, as easy on them. Because it was overwhelming for them at how active it was. So I was just kind of wondering, because
Yeah.
I mean, there's always better ways to do things. So I was just
But
kind of
I think that as an agent, you just have to make sure that you're communicating that opportunity out to the
Right.
buyer's agents and a really good buyer's agent. And as a buyer's agent, you should be listening for those clues. A
Mhm.
really good buyer's agent is like,
We'll pick
okay,
up on
I
it,
know
yeah.
what I need to do. I'm going to go write a really strong offer because if I can steal this and not go to highest and best with somebody, like I'm going to do it. And I often taught people too, to look at the context clues when they're going, and I know it's a different market these days, but look at the context clues. If we've got baby carriers all over the place and we've got dog bowls,
Right.
how inconvenient it is for people to get out, how much more motivated they might be to accept an offer and just move forward and not go to highest and best. But though, and so that would be where I would say your communication would be different. If you do end up where you're getting in offers on the property and your sellers do say, okay, we have 3 offers. Okay, Elizabeth, like I know we weren't sure before we went on, but now we definitely do want to wait and collect all offers through 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then you're able to do an announcement and send out information to everybody. You
Right.
want to make sure to send out to anyone that hasn't shown the property, you're communicating to anyone who hasn't made an offer yet, highest and best by 1 o'clock on Saturday. And yet Randy, our broker, has made it clear that on anyone that has already made an offer, that you're communicating to them. So if you have announcement, highest and best offers are due by 1 o'clock on Saturday. If you've already made an offer, if you would wish to revise your offer instead of asking from highest and best, because apparently when you ask for highest and best, if someone's already made an offer, then you're taking theirs off the table, if that makes sense. So that's a little detail, but so yeah, that would be all communications too that we're having ahead of time on how we want to handle the multiple offers. So again, that you can be that much more proactive in the information you're giving to agents to reduce your phone calls and also to make things as similar as possible across the board, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Okay, so in that case, so if it is someone that said, hey, Elizabeth, we're gonna play it by ear, because we want to kind of just play it by ear and we understand and such. I never made a big deal out of how much harder that made my job, but we're just playing it by ear. But often in that case, and any of the cases, I typically would update this spreadsheet as the offers came in. Your sellers are excited and anxious and you're going, okay, I received an offer. Okay, and it's for 200,000 and da da da. Okay, and then the second offer is coming, came in, and I heard that I've got 4 more or 3 more coming in or something of that sort. They're anxious and excited too to hear all of those things, and so it was a really good tool to say, okay, I'm starting a spreadsheet with all of the offers in it. I'm going to share it with you, and then when we review the offers, we'll review this together. But I wanted you to have a visual on what the offers coming in are. So from the beginning, I would share this with my clients from the very beginning in a view only setting, so that as offers were rolling in, if we were collecting them for 2 days, if we were collecting them just for the first day it was on the market, they were able to watch them as they came in. And I think it gave them great comfort that they were staying in communication with what was going on. And I think it started to get them to understand that, like, okay, we're going to have to make some choices here that aren't super easy. Kind of, that we are going to have to, like, somebody's going to be a loser and somebody's going to be a winner. So everybody had access to it from the very beginning and they watched it throughout the day. And then I would set an appointment with them, whether we had already said we were reviewing all offers at 5 o'clock on Sunday, or we were playing it by ear throughout the day. I would say, okay, guys, do you want to get together and just kind of have a preliminary, chat at 6 o'clock? And I would set that appointment. And then I would say, please be sure that you're in front of a computer so that we can pull up the spreadsheet and look at it together. Once I did that, I would then come into the spreadsheet with them and we would start to talk about the different offers. And we would kind of start to, so let's say that we've collected all of the offers at 7 o'clock and we're going to make a decision. I guess before I back up there too, when setting those deadline, guys, know that if you tell agents they're all due by 4 o'clock, you will end up getting some offers at 4:01 p.m. And you might be getting a really good offer at 4:15, that there is a little bit of lag time sometimes if you've got a 4 o'clock offer. Now, as a buyer's agent, note that you need to hit those deadlines to make sure that you don't miss an opportunity. But as a listing agent, just know that when you're setting those timelines, guys, oftentimes there's a little bit of a push where one comes in at 4:05 and then you're reviewing it and you're adding it to the spreadsheet. So give yourself a little bit of time between when they are due and when you're presenting to your client. And note that you need to be able to sit down and review those, update the spreadsheet, get clarity on what your opinion and what your advice would be on the offers. And as my therapist had told me, don't be afraid to think about your own personal life and family situation and family life when you're setting those deadlines. Often agents will say, okay, I guess we want to make sure we get enough people through on Saturday. And so like, we'll do deadline of 5 o'clock for all offers on a deadline of 5 o'clock on all offers. And then I'll present them to the seller at 6. And note that in that timeline, your Saturday night will be at 5 o'clock, gathering all and putting in the information for the last offers coming in, meeting with your sellers at 6 o'clock. And often that call sometimes would be 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how many you had to review and how many questions they had, maybe countering back and forth with one of the agents, and then doing paperwork and signing paperwork. To where oftentimes if you're setting those timelines, if you're reviewing starting at 6, you may not actually be signed documents in hand until 8 o'clock, 8:30 if you're lucky, kind of a thing, to where we're all kind of on edge until that's signed, nothing's done until it's signed. So don't be afraid to walk backwards into that timeline and take your own family and your own life into consideration a little bit and say, okay, actually, I'm going to collect offers through 3 o'clock and I'm going to present them at 4 o'clock because I want to be able to have dinner with my significant other or with my family on Saturday night and enjoy my evening, kind of a thing. Does that make sense? I don't know why I feel like I needed my therapist to tell me that it was okay to do that. So I guess that's why I feel like it's important to mention.
No, that's really solid advice. That's really good advice. Thank you.
She also was like, don't list houses on Friday, Elizabeth, if you don't want to work your entire weekend and answer your phone nonstop for 2 days. Like maybe consider listing them a different day. That's why I think I'm such a champion of it too. Okay, so how this would kind of go down when I get on the phone with clients. Sometimes I'd start to go in ahead of time and gray out different offers. But basically we would pull up the spreadsheet. And again, I often would hide who, I sometimes would hide who the agent was and who the agent contact info is completely by just highlighting those rows and clicking hide rows. And then we would just talk about the offer number. But we would go through and say, okay, like let's eliminate offer number 1 because the net value is the lowest. Let's go ahead and eliminate offer number 5 or offer number 7, kind of a thing. And so as we were eliminating these, we would talk about them. And then once we were like, okay, yes, definitely eliminate those, I would actually go in and hide those columns so that as we're talking through the different offers and I'm explaining to them the different terms. And again, I'd already kind of pigeoned which ones I wanted to kind of eliminate right off the bat. I was coming in and hiding these and I'm reducing the number that they have to look at. Now they're not going away and we can unhide them at any time, but I was able to go in and then just hide any of the ones that we are definitely not considering. And then it would like make it easier and easier. Okay, well, let's talk about offer number 2. The VA loan, it's 219. So it's that escalatory clause takes it to 219, but we might have some appraisal requirements. They're asking for a 10-day inspection period. And it allowed us to go through and have conversations about each and every one of the offers to where we really were able to get down to kind of our top 3 or our top 2. And it was very interesting, guys. There was a lot of times where, like in this particular case, the clients ended up not going with the highest offer. The highest offer was this offer number 3 with 225. but it was an FHA loan. We were able to talk about how they were only putting 3.5% down. It wasn't as is. My sellers had lived in the house for 12 years and they knew that there were some things that, you know, weren't perfect about it. And so that was, even though it was for more money, they said, gosh, I really kind of like that this offer number 6 is saying that they'll buy it as is. And we could talk through those different things. So having it all where everybody's able to visually look at it, and then you're able to go through and hide each of the different columns, it made it to where we ended up in a situation where it was a little bit something like, okay, so I guess I'm really kind of between offer number 4 and offer number 6. Great. What I would do at that point is go in and insert another column. And the way you would do that is just right click on the column and hit insert left, and then copy and paste over. So copy, and then you're gonna paste over here that same column. And then I would have all the same terms, you know, here in this new column I created for the counter offer to number 6. And then we would talk through each item of, are we going to counter them then? So in this case, purchase price of $212. Obviously, we're not countering anything that comes to seller paid closing cost or home warranty. The escalatory clause took to $221. So that was something that I needed to include in the counter. As you can see, we did counter them on closing and possession. So their original offer was for $416 with possession on the with possession at 5 o'clock on the 16th. We countered them with closing on the 18th with possession at noon on the 20th. We didn't counter them on inspection period. We didn't counter them on earnest. But again, this is all a reminder to yourself of, hey, do you think I could get them to a 7-day inspection period? Do you think I could get them to raise that earnest money because it isn't quite high enough for our comfort level? But that would be how I would then make it very clear to my sellers, and so that they had a visual that they could go back to while we were waiting for a response from the other agent as well, knowing exactly what are the terms that we are countering with. Part of the reason this is important, guys, is they've got a lot of different offers that they're looking at, and it can get very confusing because you're talking about a lot of offers. Their emotions are high, their stress and their anxiety is high, and they hang up the phone and then go, wait a minute, so we're countering offer number 6, but did we end up countering the closing date too, or what was it? So it was just always very nice that they had a visual and a place that they could go back to and know what it is that they were countering with. And you got everybody to be able to nod and or confirm on the, okay, we're all good with countering with what I've got in column H. Awesome. I'm gonna call them and I'll get right back to you. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, guys. Again, we talked a little bit before about, so I often, was just really an amazing listing agent. So I would call them and counter them and they'd say yes. And then we'd get things signed like ASAP and it would be great and beautiful. At this point, what I would do, and again, we said there was multiple reasons that this spreadsheet is very helpful to you further in the transaction. I would look at second place, what our second place offer was. So who almost won. That was my first phone call. And I would call and I would say, I'd obviously like then here unhide all of my agent's information. And I would call and say, hey, Jennifer, I wanted to call and reach out to you and let you know your offer was really great. Unfortunately, my sellers have decided to go with another offer, but we wanted to offer to you being our first backup offer. Would you guys be interested in being our #1 backup offer? That was my call, not you didn't get it, so sorry. My call was, can I offer you my first backup offer? From there, if Jennifer said yes or no, I would then call #3 in line and say, okay, #3, would you be interested in being my first backup offer? You weren't able to, we weren't able to accept your offer, but it was very good. And would you be interested in being my first backup offer? If so, this is what the sellers are countering you at. So you do have the ability to counter backup offers as a backup offer. So you could counter with, would your buyers be willing to be a backup offer with these terms? And so I would recommend as you go through this spreadsheet that if there are any that were really close that you would be willing to work with, and if you just needed to tweak a few things with a counter offer to them, to use this spreadsheet to do that. The other thing, and I had my way of just like, I think I would just bold the name of the agent as I had those conversations, so I knew I'd already called them. I would highly recommend as a listing agent and a professional courtesy to make a phone call to the agents. I know that this industry, Kansas City is a big, small town. Real estate in Kansas City, especially those agents that do the work, that do the transactions, it's a really small it's a small place. And so having the professional courtesy to call and tell agents instead of just sending a mass text of, sorry, buyer, sellers went another direction, you didn't get it, will go a long way for you in your career in Kansas City as a realtor. But the other thing that was nice about that is as I was calling the agents and letting them know, I was able to give them some feedback too. And in that, it was really, really helpful to them that if I were to call Jody and say, hey, Jody, I just wanted to let you know, thank you so much for your time and your effort in making an offer. The sellers did select another offer, but I wanted to call and let you know a little bit of feedback that could help you and your buyers as you pursue other properties. So Jody, we ended up with 8 offers. Of those 8 offers, all of them were at asking or above. And actually, you know, 6 of the 8, or I'm sorry, we had 7 offers. Of those 7 offers, all of them were at asking or above. Actually, 5 of them were above list price and significantly above list price. We only had 2 offers that actually asked for closing cost, yours being one of those. Everybody else did not include closing cost in their offer. You were the, you and 2 others asked for a home warranty, but no, the sellers did, you know, everyone had kind of around the same closing date, if that was the case, or you had a much longer closing date than everybody else. Inspection period, you were the only one that had a 12-day inspection period. Everybody else was pretty across the board 10-day. But of the offers we received, we did have, of the 7, 6 of them were financed offers. You were a conventional, and so were 3 others. So note that you've got that in your favor, that there were some others that were, you know, FHA or VA. You had 20% down, other offers that you were one of the strongest down payments as well. So like I can't tell you guys how much going through and thinking through kind of that script and like what information you can give them to help them understand where they can tweak their offer and be a winner next time, that those agents are incredibly grateful to you. And it will go a long way for you when the shoe's on the other foot and they're looking at 14 offers and they're going, you know what? I really, like, Elizabeth was a class act and I really appreciated how she called and gave me that feedback. So I'm going to call and see if she I mean, I really would love to work with her. I can tell that she's a really great agent. Let me call and see if she's in our top 3. Let me call and see if I can help, you know, give her some more information, or when I'm calling and asking, how can I improve my offer? What can I do to get my buyers to win? Those are the ways that it really pays back to take that extra bit of time to give them that feedback, and it helps them be successful in the next time. So again, this was something that was like a living document that I kept and would refer back to if we fell out of contract and I needed to go back and call the other agents to say, I know you didn't want to be a backup offer, but are your clients still looking? Have they found something? It made it really easy to be able to know who I could call and in what order to call them if anything happened during the transaction. And it was also very helpful with an appraiser to say, hey, we had 7 offers. Of those 7, 5 of them were above asking. I'm happy to give you any of the information you want here. And here's a summary of what those offers look like and why we ended up accepting something that was $21,000 over asking. So thank you. So any questions I can help answer? That's kind of the gist of this spreadsheet or of this template.
Oh, no, I think it's really great. Are you willing to share your awesome spreadsheet?
Of course, always. And if you need access to it, by all means, just let me know. If it prompts you to ask for like access to make a copy or editor. But yes, of course, always.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Need it, like, by all means, I'm happy to share. And make it your own, guys. Like, there may be better ways to do this. Like, I am 100% aware that like make it your own. But yes, I will share it with each of you and see if we can get it in the link below.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Any other questions, guys?
I don't have any.
Excellent.
I asked mine.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, enjoy the start to your Monday. We've got this recorded, so we will share it as well. And then I will make sure you each get a copy of the template.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You are very welcome. I hope to see you guys tomorrow for team meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.